Welcome, everyone, to the Customer Success Leadership Roundtable. My name is Andrew Marks. I am the co-founder of Success Hacker and our Success Coaching Training Program. We're back for our monthly live webcast. Now, with my glasses on, today talking about customer success tools. This free learning event is brought to you by Success Coaching, the world leader in customer success professional development training with more than 18,000 students globally. Our programs are available in a variety of formats, from self-paced online learning to virtual instructor-led boot camps. We're now accepting registrations for all of our virtual instructor-led programs through the end of the year. We've got our fall 12-week coaching program being offered in partnership with the University of San Francisco, launching again in mid-September, along with a number of standalone courses taught by industry experts, including data-driven decision-making, having difficult conversations, change management for customer success, outcome-based selling, and what successful managers do, a 12-week management training and coaching program for those that have moved into or looking to move into customer success leadership. By the way, that program launches at the end of this month, so you still have time to join if you're interested. Find out more at successcoaching.co. Ashley will also drop the link in chat along with a special coupon code for our fall USF coaching cohorts that is good through the end of August. For those of you who haven't participated in one of these events before, this is a live and unscripted discussion where we dig into a single topic relevant to customer success. Regardless of the company you work for, the scope of your role, or the sizes of the customers that your teams deal with, we aim to pick topics that are going to be practical and useful to you. The schedule for our upcoming events can also be found at successcoaching.co. Click on the events tab at the top of the page to find out more. A few housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar is recorded and we'll be posting a replay along with a transcription on our website early next week. We will be taking questions later during the webinar, so please don't be shy and use that Q&A button found at the bottom of your screen to ask or upvote a question. We're also broadcasting on LinkedIn Live, and we have someone monitoring that feed. Thank you, Tracy. So if you have questions watching on LinkedIn, please post them and they'll be relayed to us. Also, please keep all commentary to the chat window. There's a lot of thought leadership out there, along with a lot of theories about how to deliver customer success. In this series, we focus on the practical, real-world advice, best practices, techniques, and shared experiences from those working with or leading customer success teams on a daily basis. To do that, we invite three panelists to join me for a roundtable discussion. These are people who are great at their craft, and we ask them to share their experiences and their perspectives. So without further ado, I'd like our panelists to introduce themselves to y'all, talk a bit about who they are and what they do, and let's get started as usual in alphabetical order with Adel.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Hey, everyone. My name is Adel Dittmer. I'm the Director of Customer Success at Tropic. And what we do is provide a SaaS management platform, as well as a professional services team that specializes in buying software for our customers. So I've seen about 350 or so purchases for different tools that are classified as being in the customer space over the last year or so, and got a lot of learnings from that. Excited to share a little bit more today.
I bet. Awesome. Thanks, Adel. Alyssa, you're up.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa. I currently work at Akamai, which powers and protects life online. I work there as a customer success manager, working with a number of Fortune 500 companies to help them realize the value of their solutions and services. Before I came to Akamai, I had worked in a number of other customer success roles, and I'm really passionate about helping my customers achieve their goals, supporting my colleagues, and mentoring others in customer success.
Awesome. Thanks, Alyssa. And last but not least, Mickey.
Hey, everybody. My name is Mickey Powell. I'm the manager of customer success operations at Brightwheel, which is a SaaS platform for early education centers in the United States with just over 20,000 customers. Previously, worked at companies like Zora and Five Stars, spanning everything from Series A through public enterprise companies. Really excited to chat today because my whole job revolves around helping build efficient and effective customer success teams, and tools are a major part in that process. Excited to chat, and thank you all for coming.
Excellent. Once again, we all appreciate your time today. So now let's get to the topic at hand. There are so many different tools that customer success teams can use to help them in their roles, from the basic to the complex. I wanted to spend our time today talking about how leaders should approach tools selection and usage, and the types of variables they should be looking at when evaluating tools of various types, sizes, and complexities. But to get things started, would you consider something as simple as Google Sheets or Google Docs as a viable tool for a customer success team?
Yeah, Andrew, I think that's a great kicking off question. And to kind of zoom out to the higher level theme, tools, in my opinion, they should amplify processes or systems in hopefully a positive way. And a spreadsheet or slideshow, Google Docs is a really fantastic and well-known tool for a lot of folks. So I think you should think of it that way, and it can have a big positive impact on your team.
Yeah, Vicky, it's interesting when you say amplify too. I think of that as who are we amplifying these insights to, and so I've certainly used Google Sheets as a tool to keep track of health or key decision makers, and as well as key next steps, and being one of the easiest things to be able to share with your executive leadership team or individual contributors that you want to contribute to a team. So I've found that Google Sheets is actually a really easy place to start, and a place to really test out assumptions that you have around what you want to measure and see impact on from a customer base.
So I will say that I like Google Sheets. I think it does serve a good purpose, especially if you don't have a lot of other tools available. For instance, if you don't have a customer success management tool that's more robust, and I use it on a daily basis, I wouldn't say it's the most optimal tool for customer success management in terms of managing your customers, managing, say, your communications, and even managing health scores. But it does suffice at times. I look at Google Sheets a lot of times as an amplified Excel sheet, and especially if you're looking Google Sheets. But at the same time, it's something I use, and it does suffice for what I need it for right now. But again, I don't think it really takes the place of more robust systems.
I 100% agree with you. I think, Adel hit it on the head there. It's a good place to start.
Right.
But I've seen companies, I've seen individuals try to implement systems too soon.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I was going to say timing is a really important factor for all of these conversations. And how I kind of think about it is there's different phases that companies and products and organizations go through. So there's already 3 variables you need to consider. And I'm going to use an analogy to kind of tie this together. Utility providers that provide electricity hardly ever fail, right? If you go in your house to flip on a light switch, that light switch is going to work 99.9% of the time. That's kind of how I think about Google Sheets. It should be a utility that I can always rely on if other things fail. Now, there are limitations to what Google Sheets can do. That's when you start to get into the territory of, I need another tool to augment or to go to a place that Google Sheets is never going to try to go to.
Indeed. And I would say, that comes back to what you're trying to achieve. really is, what are you using it for? And that's when I think about Google Sheets, is if I'm trying to say use it as a project management tool, sometimes it does work. I have it set up even in my own world that it does work at certain times. When I compare it with, say, a real project management tool that's designed for that, I would say that definitely worked a little bit better. But you also have to think about your teams, how other folks are going to be using this, how it's going to be accessed, the complexity of the teams and what needs to be accomplished, and what you're also going to be showing to the customer. If you're going to be sharing something with your customer, you may not be able to show it in any other way besides a Google Sheet, for instance. And even that has its limitations too. If you have firewalls, you might not be able to even share certain information with your customers, or if they have firewalls, either or. But I'm not discounting Google Sheets altogether. It's more like, what am I trying to achieve here? And, looking at those different areas.
Alyssa, I think I'd like to take that a step further. There's a question that came in about, how do you convince top level management of a more advanced CS tool than Google Sheets, and how to defend the ROI? And I do think it comes back to what you're trying to accomplish. And I would actually say it's probably not about defending the ROI when it comes to making the business case justification to most management. I don't think anyone out there is gonna contest that there's better advanced CS tools that'll do something better for you than a Google Sheet will. But you kind of have to tie that back to what are the goals of your team, or even your top level management, and thinking of it too in terms of who you roll up to at different organizations. There potentially could be different things that are really key or matter to them, right? So at my organization, CS ultimately rolls up to our COO. So we're very focused on operating expenses and gross margins. And what we do for our customers is help them think about operating expenses and gross margins. So for us, it's how do we come up with the tooling or the information that kind of supports the goals of the business and the team. And ultimately, I think switching the conversation from ROI, which I think most sales partners that you're working with are going to do a good job of helping you make that conversation, to understanding the pain point you're trying to solve and where the tool is going to come in and do that for you.
All right, and that's a great segue into something that I think is super important that we talk about, and that has to do with the timing. We touched on that originally. I have been in situations where a new leader has been tasked with implementing some tool that the company had purchased and they hadn't implemented yet, but they hadn't really laid out the customer journey. They hadn't then gone through the effort of figuring out, okay, well, what is it that we're trying to measure? What is it that we're trying to achieve with our customer? They thought that the tool was going to be this silver bullet and solve all of the problems, really, when the root cause of the problem was the fact that they didn't have everything, they didn't get their head around everything that's going on that they're trying to achieve with their customer. A tool isn't going to solve that problem. You've got to figure that stuff out. And even if it evolves, as it should over time, the tool then evolves with it.
Yeah, I think the time factor is really important, and something that I think a lot about in the product space, the organization, the company. And I'm going to use a product as an example, and I'm going to kind of parlay this into a question from Matt about how to scale them down. So if you think about an organization and you think about their product, most products over time are going to get bigger, right? You're going to add things on to make that product more appealing to your customer base. That means that you're going to have different needs internally to support your customers, to get them to their outcomes, and to run an efficient and effective team. So when it comes to tools, you can kind of think over time, I'm probably going to need more tools. And a lot of times, as you mentioned, Andrew, teams will grab onto new tools quickly because they think it's going to solve everything. And to Matt's point and question in the chat, the common ask is hey, how do you have less tools? because you might find yourself and you might walk into this saying, we've already got too many. We're spending too much money on tooling. To how I've dealt with that problem is actually take a page out of an industry that does really well in this regard, which is manufacturing. They have a methodology called Six Sigma. For anybody that's studied Six Sigma, looked at Six Sigma, I use it in the SaaS world for customer success orgs because it's really good at helping you understand an entire system. And when I say system, I'm thinking about the customer success team as a system. They have processes, they have inputs and outputs, they have some things that are used as resources to turn into some sort of output. And tools should help you with that. So when you talk about like, how do you consolidate and get to less tooling, you need to understand how that whole team works before you can start adding or subtracting the tools. And you can make reasonable assumptions, or you can make hypotheses to test of, hey, we have this tool, maybe we need to rip it out. And to Alyssa's point about like project management out of Google Sheets, hey, if you're a young team, you don't necessarily need to go buy Asana or to try to get everybody to learn Notion or Smart Sheets. Google Sheets might totally suffice in the early stages, and you make that trade-off of agility in the early stages, and that'll keep your tooling costs and your tooling overhead in terms of the time you have to invest in learning and enabling and updating a system down.
So your customer journey plays a significant role, because what you're talking about is the system that supports that customer journey. Your customer journey plays a significant role in your tool selection. And that's going to evolve over time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and when we talk about that customer journey, it's bigger system even than just when you're working with the customer success team, right? So, excuse me, like, whatever tooling your sales team might be using in a sales-led organization, and what they're capturing about prospective customers before it even comes to you becomes, inputs into that customer success system. And then, so I think like those are always opportunities when you think about rationalizing costs to see what's already being used as far as systems and other parts of the organization. I think what I find with like leaders at businesses is their biggest fear is that there are, similar tools doing similar things all across the business, which, it's easy to make a justification for one of those tools in the early days, but all of a sudden you're paying double or triple what you need to for redundancies across the organization.
Yeah, Adol or Alyssa, have you ever, started at a company and have seen, oh, there's this data or this tool, but nobody seems to be using it, or it's not entirely accurate. It's just kind of been, somebody made a decision well before you, and now it's there.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Alyssa.
I've seen redundancy in tools where the tools are doing pretty much the same thing. And the one thing I would say interesting about when we're talking about certain tools about whether or not to use something, though, going back to that topic of whether or not to implement something in the beginning versus seeing what's out there that's free. Someone asks about, what are free? Should we go there in terms of, and looking at someone from Lee Clark about data and scaling. But when you're thinking about, if you have a new team, I've been part of new customer success teams. And I think it really helps that we use the right tool in the beginning versus just using, say, the free and easy option. Because what happens is if you're using the free and easy option and then it doesn't work out, and then you're trying to then transfer all your information and all your customers and everything you've done now to that tool, it can be just a really complicated process, or it can just be not a very efficient process. Whereas if you have the right tools in the beginning, I feel like you're setting up your team and you're setting up yourself, if you're the only person on that team, which I've been, for more success.
Yeah, but if you have a problem justifying spend, then you need to start with the free, right? You need to start with the free, with a sample data set, do some initial analysis, do some initial work with something that's free, and then be able to take, hey, based off of this data set that we had, it was definitely a lot more laborious than we normally would have wanted to deal with from a data analysis perspective, but we were able to extract these insights. And if we went out and got this data analytics package, we'd be able to do it far quicker, far more efficiently, and get a lot more insight out of it. But here's an example of us doing it, even though it was a heavy lift. So I agree with you. You'll get to a point, but that free stuff is where you kind of build your justification to spend the money.
Indeed. And I wouldn't say not to go free if that's the only option. Obviously, if you have no other option and you have no budget, but sometimes what I've realized is that depending on the cost, there might be budget. I'm not talking about huge system, like the more the complex customer success tools that are costing, say, $10,000, $20,000 a year. I'm looking at tools that may be a lot less, especially when you have a small team or a small company. They may be charging a lot less, and you might be able to justify that as a cost as part of just doing business. You want a customer success team. You want us to be successful. Like you have, say, for instance, like a Salesforce for your sales team. You're not going to probably start with Excel for CS when you're doing sales. How are you looking at customer success? Are you going to be like, just use Excel, just to do that? If you have the budget. Obviously, if you don't have the budget, then you do need to justify those costs. So I think it really depends on that situation as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a good point you're making is, hey, starting someplace that doesn't match just because it's free is ignoring a lot of variables that you have to consider. So, and I feel your pain because, I've been a CSM and now I help CSMs be more efficient and effective. And sometimes I have to tell them we're making an explicit trade-off of you're going to have to go through some pain of collecting some data manually so that we can understand just how big this problem or opportunity is for us as an organization and our organizational goals, as well as a customer and their goals. And an example that I think illustrates this really well, I was consulting for a Series A company in the third-party logistics space and helping their customer success team start to build out some more repeatable processes. And they used a combination of like a lightweight data visualization tool, something that's not as expensive or powerful as Tableau, but it gave them some customer telemetry to understand what our customers are doing. And then they paired that with sheets to kind of manage their customers and their customer process. But they didn't use, and then they used Notion for like staging and things like that. And, Notion, you don't have to tie Notion to it could be anything to kind of see the staging and move across. And I thought that was a really good example of, hey, they're really young. They don't know exactly what they need yet. And they found a lightweight and light cost way of doing what they needed to do at that time. And they asked me, actually, should we get a customer success platform? And I told them, no, you guys aren't ready for it. It's going to be more hassle than it's worth for you at this point. And also, they only had like 500 customers and they were only adding maybe 20 or 30 a month. And I told them, hey, right now, I think it's really important for you guys to stay very close to your customers and not put things in between you and your customers while you grow, which would be very different than, let's say, a public company with thousands of customers or tens of thousands of customers.
Yeah. I think, Mickey, you might have made a point about like timing earlier. And so there's just, there's the timing of the purchase, but I also think it's important to think about like, where we're at just right now in terms of the economy. And so, what we're seeing across all of our customer bases is like, everyone is trying very much to reduce operating expenses and take a hard look at their COGS. And so, when we look at the top 10 most purchased tools right now across all of our customer bases, there aren't any customer tools in there. When we look at like the most common tools that people are renewing or keeping, like those are all across the board there, whether it's for customer support or CS tooling. And so I think a lot of businesses are basically saying right now, we need to hold on to our customers to like maintain any efficient growth we have at any cost necessary. But it's a much harder sell now to invest more into some of those customer tooling and support things in a new way that we haven't been able to do before. And so a lot of that ultimately probably comes to maybe you come up with a short-term solution or tool to build out a business case to get something that you might need down the line when things look different for your business.
And see, that just seems so backwards to me. Right? It's good to hear that companies are focused on, hey, we got to do what we need to do in order to retain our customers, because at the beginning of COVID, that wasn't happening. Mm-hmm. They were laying off customer success folks instead of salespeople, and I'm thinking, wow, that is absolutely backwards. But I would think that if anything, you'd see budgets shifting to investing in customer retention, because that allows the more efficient we make customer success teams and the better we make them at delivering success, whether it's through a tool or through training or what have you, the more likely they're going to be able to retain their customers and not have to throw bodies at that retention effort.
Yeah, I mean, the throwing bodies thing is definitely a valid point. And Adel, you had talked about making a business case, and I kind of I want to relate that to a question from Lean, is what about when you scale and the data and you need more that free or low cost tools aren't going to provide? I actually think that making a business case and starting to see a need grow it's a very, very useful time to stop and to lift up your head. Because if you're experiencing that problem, what's more likely, that you're the only one in the business experiencing that problem, or other parts of the business are experiencing that problem? And I found the latter to be mostly true. And I do this a lot as in CS Ops, is I go talk to stakeholders, not just in CS, but I go to product, I go to marketing, I go to sales ops, I go to engineering, I go to analytics. Obviously, your organization might have different structures, but I'm constantly trying to make those connections so that I can find out, and this has helped me in a lot of ways, oh, you're actually thinking about buying a BI tool, or you are cleaning up our production databases so that customer product usage information is easier. That's awesome. How can I piggyback off of that to help my team get what they need? And that will help as the general shift of the organization has needs and areas that will help customer success. You've got to have somebody, whether it's somebody like me or, if Alyssa, I've seen lots of CSMs do this, by the way, create really strong relationships cross-functionally so that they can get what they need. And you can also give them things, right? You can say, hey, because you gave me access to this customer health or product usage information, here's some actionable takeaways on where we should actually push the product. And now the product team's going to be like, hey, customer success needs more access to this stuff because they're giving us information that's making us more effective on driving the product forward.
Yeah, it's that here's a little taste, right? And it may require you to do a lot more work up front. Here's a little taste. You want more? Well, we need help in getting more.
Yeah.
So what are some of the variables, and Adel, you live this, you and your team live this on a regular basis. What are some of those variables that you're typically looking at when evaluating tools, or what your customers are typically looking at when evaluating tools?
Yeah, totally. So I think there's two things, right? It's what's the team specific need, and then what does the system need, I think, to use Mickey's language from earlier. And so, we've seen partners that we work with build out RFPs where they're going really into the nitty-gritty of, where is the the integration capabilities of these tools, and how does this play nicely with the rest of our tech stack? And even things that aren't specific to the product functionality, like the perceived, how well service you might get or support, or is there a dedicated CSM or a scaled approach or a community and any of those things. And I think, ultimately, when you think of just like the value that you're going to get out of a tool, it's how do you reconcile what you need in the short term with something that's available to you for the best costs. And the best tip that we give our teams is we'll never tell someone, hey, like you should go out there and think about purchasing this tool, but really taking a step back to meet with vendors. Like I think salespeople maybe sometimes don't get a bad rep for one reason or another, but they're tremendously good at being able to help you identify your issues and understand what those pain points are. And if they're doing their job, they should be doing discovery and what you need the most help for, and explaining in a way that you can potentially get a solution to a problem you're trying to solve. And not mentioning a budget to those vendors or a timeline or showing them that you are going to do everything in your power to make that purchase happen, because then it potentially takes away from your opportunities to save money on that initial cost if you're looking at some competitors there too as well.
And we were talking about that in particular in the prep call that we had earlier this week about how you should definitely not be afraid of the salespeople. They actually can help you with clarity and it maybe expose some things you didn't even think about. So you should totally take advantage of that.
And
go ahead, Alyssa.
On that is that in addition to talking to the salespeople, talk to their customers. When I was a director of customer success at another role and looking at different tools, did a lot of demos, so many demos. And it really did help me decide on maybe what I needed and what type of reports would be really good for what we're trying to accomplish. And it also, it really opened up different capabilities I didn't even know customer success tools could do. But one thing it didn't do was give me the firsthand glimpse of how do other people use this? What are other companies doing? What are they trying to accomplish that maybe I'm not even thinking about? So that's something I did as well. And we forget sometimes to ask that, hey, can I talk to some of your customers who are using this tool? And can they even provide me a demo of how they're using it? Some people will show you. I actually had somebody show me live how they used the tool under NDA, of course, and it was really useful. It was learning, because I think that's, especially when you're new to this, when you're very new, and I was new to choosing a new like robust customer success management tool. Everything seemed great. It was all really shiny and new, and I wanted to do everything, but of course you can't. So then you have to really get down to brass tacks, as like what Ada was saying, is like, what am I trying to accomplish? Really, what am I trying to accomplish by getting a tool? What kind of functionalities do I really need? Of course, thinking about your budget in your back of your mind, but it's not I didn't consider it the front of the mind until I really got the numbers from sales, because then you realize what you have to work with. But yeah, I think that's a number one area. If I was going to say, or two pieces of advice: get lots of demos, talk to other customers.
And this is not all sales reps will do this, but I also ask, can I talk to customers that have left you? Can I understand why they have left you? Not because I'm looking for, the dirty secrets, but are they going to have challenges that, I actually might have that challenge? I've worked for companies before where it's hard to get at the right customer data. And there are certain platforms out there that are much better when you have access to that customer data. So am I going to experience that same problem? Or is a marketing team in my organization really protective of any customer communications? That might change who I buy, when I buy, how I buy. And so I think that's a really fantastic point, Alyssa. And I was also going to say, you should be talking to your team as well and figuring out what they're doing, how they're doing it, where they're experiencing frustrations, problems, obstacles, because that will inform what type of tool you use. And CSMs, when I'm in CS Ops, I do think about myself as a CSM for the customer success team. And I'm constantly trying to ask questions and understand how they're going to get to the outcomes they need and how I'm going to help them get there.
Well, it's those are all great suggestions. I mean, you need to identify. You can't just go in and say, "Show me a demo," and then come up with your desired, your list of desired systems capabilities. You got to put a stake in the ground. The other thing that I want to caution people on is don't try and boil the ocean, right? What I liked to do when we were doing a lot of consulting with various customers, we would not make a specific we would not give them a specific vendor recommendation. We would give them a group of vendors that they might want to look at based off of the system capabilities that they were thinking of. But we basically would use Google Sheets, and we would create just a simple sheet that said, these are the must-haves, these are the nice to haves, and then maybe a third tier of, oh, that'd be great, but really doesn't play an important role. And then we'd ask people within each one of those sections to stack rank them. And then as we started as we identified a cohort of products that could serve the needs, we would go ahead and lay those out in the sheet and be able to, we had a way to code which systems seemed to have the best of what we were, they had enough of what we were looking for. But back to my original comment, don't try and boil the ocean. You're not trying to automate everything. Right. The key is, though, understanding, like you said at the beginning, Mickey, the system that you're working within and the things that are that automation, that some sort of system is going to have the biggest impact on.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt asked a question in the chat about, for companies that already have a robust CRM, like Salesforce, have we seen any specific use cases or that absolutely require another tool? Do we feel like a strong CRM instance can suffice? This reminds me of a story. I actually asked a director of systems administration who was managing the Salesforce instance. We were going through the process of purchasing a CS platform, and I asked her, I was like, hey, why are you signing off on this? Because you are managing Salesforce. You control that. You're approving having this whole offshoot, hiring new people, having a development happening outside of Salesforce. And what she told me is, hey, there are things like Salesforce can do pretty much anything, but all of that development cost to do those things is much greater than buying this platform at the stage that this company was at. And to kind of give a rough sense, 1,100 customers, about 50 CSMs. So a fairly sizable team in the enterprise space. So big contract values. So yes, if you have a strong Salesforce implementation with a strong Salesforce team, and I've seen really good ones and I've seen really bad ones, you could totally get away with not purchasing a CS platform in the interim. I think on a long enough time frame, you will likely start to run into some problems where, for instance, sending mass communications, not the easiest out of Salesforce with managed packages like, Marketo or something like that. So you can get away with it, but there are some trade-offs in the positive column for saying, hey, there is a tool that is more, or tools that are more aligned with what a day-to-day CSM and CS team needs.
I had a customer. They had used Salesforce. They invested a lot of money in Salesforce. They weren't at the stage yet to justify a standalone CS system. So what we did is we paired Salesforce with a workflow tool that basically provided a punch list. Here's all the things that you need to be doing. And there was an integration, Salesforce integration, where we could capture that the CSM went through for a particular playbook, went through and did all these things. And for what they needed at the time, it was ideal because it wasn't an expensive add-on. It was like $30 a seat, and but it addressed the key issue that they had, which was we need to make sure that everybody is doing the right thing in the right way and at the right time for our customer.
Yeah, I don't know if this is like a good metaphor or not, but like I almost think of like Salesforce as just like an infinite amount of like Lego blocks where it's like you can pretty much build it into anything that you want and need if you want to sit there and figure out like the design and conceptualization for it. And sometimes that's what you want to do, and other times you just want to have a different toy like a Mr. Potato Head where it's still like kind of customizable, but you kind of have a sense of like where certain things are supposed to go, and you've got the main shape of what you're going to get anyways. And I think like the CS tool should kind of guide the leadership or the ICs towards like how you should be using your tool to impact the customer outcomes that you want. And if you're using Salesforce, then you're basically telling yourself, I want to architect how we're going to do this from start to finish. And if you've got strong internal resources, or you've got a customer ops team or something like that's a skill and a specialty they have, then maybe that's the way you want to go.
Alyssa, how do you deal with customers asking for your product to do more different things?
Are you referring to the question from Gary? Where you can see that. How do you get
yeah.
But let me
not directly, but I think it's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Take it.
Gary had a question regarding about gathering information about products, and I had asked to clarify that because there's a lot. That could go in many different ways. Are you looking at usage? Are you looking at trying to get feedback about the customer specifically? But you're asking about the question was really is if having a back-end system where you know what your users do and don't do, and understanding if the users are getting results, if your customers are getting results that they need. And then Gary had asked if they'll need to either aggregate or process this information on third-party platform or convince their engineering team to build access systems and dashboards for customer success. Well, good luck with that one on the second part of trying to get your engineering team to build special access systems and dashboards for customer success to gather information. But it can happen. I mean, yeah, I will say I work at a company where we had a dashboard to look at information and understand our accounts well, to basically where we can see how our accounts, our customers are using our different solutions and our services. We do actually have that. But in terms of specific feedback, of gathering feedback from customers and how they're using it is what I'm understanding. I generally have seen a lot of different ways of doing that. One is in-app chats, gathering information that way, doing surveying. I see surveying tools a really good way of doing it, and actually just conversations. I mean, that's part of a customer success manager's role, is really having conversations and understanding how your customers are using that product and gathering feedback on those products, and if it's working for them or if it's not working for them. I mean, you don't want to have that come up during your renewal for sure. Find out it's not working for them. But that's how I would probably approach it. There's different ways of approaching it for sure.
Actually, Gary, I think what you need to do is you need to put a stake in the ground of what you think it's going to cost to aggregate and process that information on a third-party platform, and then go to engineering. Actually, if it's something that you think that your engineering team should build, the way I would look at it is I would show those costs to your C-suite, especially your CFO, and get them on board to approaching engineering. At the end of the day, like Alyssa said, if they've got plenty on their plate, I'm sure, that are focused on helping customers get value or open up new opportunities, that they're probably going to say it doesn't really matter what the cost is. But there comes a point where it becomes cost prohibitive for you to go and try and get that budget. It might make sense for the engineering team to actually build access, and you don't even know what they've already built. I remember at one customer or at one company I worked with, we asked for that type of information, and they said, "Yeah, we actually have a bunch of that already. It's not a huge lift for us to, put it into a format that would make it easy for you and your team to view."
So when Alyssa was kind of sharing how she approaches these things, like the different feedback, I'm going to kind of zoom this back out to the variables. So Andrew, you had previously asked, like, what are the different variables, the things you have to consider? And I'm going to throw out some broad buckets, and I'm not covering all of them. But number one is, where are your customers? You also have to consider the stage of your company and your product, because early on, there's not going to be enough engineers. They're going to be solely focused on like keeping the thing working, because if it's a new product, it might be more prone to breaking. So you might have a incredibly difficult time getting any of their attention. There's also the size of the contract, like the actual economics of your business model. I've worked for Zora, where we're talking hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars a year contract values. And the company I'm with right now, Brightwheel, we're talking a few $1,000s a year. So it's a very different motion. You have to approach it very differently. Those are a bunch of different factors that come into play when you're thinking about the tool and the timing and how you get what you need to get.
I agree on that. And the reason I made the remark about saying good luck with your engineers is because I was at a company, at a small startup, and our engineers were working so much that I think if I came to them and asked them to build out a tool, which I knew was, did not exist or was not part of it just wasn't part of our backend systems. I know we didn't have anything like that. They would have even coming up with I love the case, Andrew, about coming up and making that case. Like, this is going to take me more time to do this if I'm going to do this myself and try to do it all manually, trying to get all this information. But I also knew the limitations of a very overworked engineering and very small engineering team, that I would have to just be really careful on how I approached that, and also manage my own expectations of, can I really do this here, or am I going to be just barking up the wrong wheel here, and what should I really be focusing on?
Hey, I think that's a great call out, Alyssa. So we have, I think, a quick question.
Let's see, Gary. Thank you, Gary, for that question. We have some other questions here. Anybody want to ask questions, please feel free to add them to the question list. Let's see, Yogesh. Yogesh asks, what would be your recommendation for tool to share a success plan with objectives? Something that's kind of a live document, or is there a better approach for communicating objectives or a B2B product that has milestones over a 6 to 12 month period? I'm sure, Mickey, you've got an idea on this, but personally, having, being the one that's been teaching success plans and success planning for the last few years, there's definitely a school of thought that you should just keep all those iterations of your success plan. So it's just editing, it's editing one and keeping the originals so that you can show progression over time. But I don't know if there's something better out there that any of you have seen to manage success plans.
So I did a ton of work on this in particular last year with Zora in a CS platform. And Zora hires really talented and very technically savvy folks because it's a very technical product. And they struggled. And I struggled to help them run the success plan process effectively within the tool. And I thought a lot about, why isn't this working as easy as it should? Because these are smart, capable people. And I generally think of myself as smart and capable, though I struggled enough to maybe second guess myself a few times. So what I found to be really successful, I really love Andrew's suggestion on like keeping old iterations. I think it's important to know how decisions and priorities change over time. it's also really important to know what the priorities are right now. And I think the administrative overhead, which is a fancy term to say, the more steps and clicks and line items you have to adjust and update, the worse off your team's going to be. And they're going to hate it. Because if they have 2 success plans for 20 customers times 3 objectives, they're really not going to like it. What I see as being really important for success plans, and this should inform your tooling, is keep the burden low for your team, keep the ability to get that in front of your customer high. So don't put barriers. So like, don't choose a tool that they have to then sign up for something. If you can just send it to them in an email or share it in a Google Doc or Sheet or what have you. Because what I think success plans are really important for is alignment. And if you are not aligned with your customer, that they're working on the most important thing for them, then it should be very clear in whatever tool you use that that is the case. And if you aren't clear, you use that as a lightning rod to say, we need to get alignment, whether it's going up the food chain on your side or my side, or across on your side or my side.
I completely agree about the alignment. I think that the key part of doing success planning really is less about the format, the tool, than being aligned with your customer on what that looks like. And that they're able to view that and make comments on that if they need to. But basically something that you can speak of at any given time. Anyone can pull it up. Also, I think that's another part. Anybody in your team can pull that up at any single time. They understand what the plan looks like, what the priorities are, what the goals are, who the stakeholders are, and it's really easy to access, especially if you're transitioning the account or whatever happens.
Well, you also want to make it easy for the customer to pull up as well.
Exactly.
So yeah, if you have something that's something where you can make it easily accessible to everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Because I think that's
maybe
one thing.
Even the previous versions.
Indeed.
But yes, alignment is huge with success plans. And the other big A with success plans is accountability, right? Mm-hmm. That success plan is meant to be that collaboration point with your customer and drive accountability as well.
Yeah, I like the idea of what you're saying about sharing it with your customer, especially since at least I work in a company of most people. It's a very technical company I work with. There's a lot of movement that happens. So you really want to make sure that as new people, you don't know your champion today may not be your champion in a year.
Yep.
So you do want to make sure that's why the communication is so important, and that sharing of information is always so important.
For sure.
One indicator I use with the success plan to see if there's that accountability and alignment is, I do think it's important to make sure it's shareable. And I've done this even in just, shared Google Sheets or Microsoft Docs or whatever. But I ask myself, are any updates happening to that plan on the customer side, or is nothing getting updated until the next time we meet? And I'm coming up to the call and saying, like, here's all the things that I've done for you since the last time we met, right? And then that to me is a signal of partnership and understanding of, I think most of us out here probably work somewhere where there's work that needs to be done off of those live calls on both sides. And that's how I think of that plan, kind of tracking towards that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And to both your and Andrew and Alyssa's points, accountability is really key. At Zora, we develop success plans with the express purpose of, if things aren't getting done, use this to push people. So like at Zora, the common person the CSM was talking to was not the decision maker, not the person that could sign the contract. So we coached them and developed the process to say, use this. You got to have a conversation with that decision maker, and the priorities roll down. And if the person at the bottom wants to do something different, well, now you need to say, nope, we're not continuing forward until we get alignment back on priorities. using that place as a shared document. And I really, Adel, I really love the point about the that you made of just like how that needs to work together. So
awesome. Next question. And by the way, for those who are joining us for the first time, we will go as long as we need to up till 1:15 to answer questions before we all sign off here. So Jason asks, is the first CS hire responsible for building the CS org? What should be the first tool in my toolbox? Adel, you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, I do, and I'm definitely going to make some assumptions here, Jason, around situation you're in the first hire, looking for your first tool. So I'm assuming it's small company, potentially found product market fit, potentially not, and you're likely in a role where you're in a player coach role and you're working with a lot of your customers. And for me, like the first tool that I go to is Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever. Like I just think I've been in a similar, really early stage with a couple companies now, and you got to be talking to your customers more than anything. And if you're not in a place to be able to record those conversations, to share snippets with folks with a tool, then use the native record functionality and ask for permission to record calls on Microsoft Teams or Zoom. And I just think like nothing's more important at that phase than just having conversations and keeping notes on those conversations. I think some of the other things we've been talking about, success plans, CS software, Google Sheets and stuff, those all help with scale. And in the cases where I've been the first hire in my org or an early hire in my org, more often, it's been more about like really like doing things that don't scale well and just hearing as much as you can about your customers and making them happy. So probably not the answer people are looking for there is the magic early tool, but I do think like conversations is the key thing to be happening at that point. And then from there, you'll understand a little bit more around where to make investments. And hopefully you're at a place in an early enough company where there is some capital to make some bets and some guesses on what's going to make the most impact on your customers.
I love that, Adel. It's you're going to do stuff manually. It's going to be laborious at first, but yeah, figure out what it is you're trying to achieve and how your customers, remember, customer success is not just the customer reaching their desired outcome, but also the experience that they have along the way. And you're going to discover a lot of that as you meet and talk about things with your customers and with your colleagues, and with your management and your peers and people in other organizations within your company. Love the Zoom call out. Zoom has always been a great tool, using tools like Temi or Rev.com to do transcriptions. Temi is AI transcription. Rev.com is live human transcription to transcribe those things. So you have something that you can turn into notes and be able to stand up as here's some examples of what our customers are saying. And then, of course, Google Suite. Google Suite is cheap, easy to understand. And while Microsoft now has the option to collaborate, Google has always been a collaboration point. So you can send a link and say, hey, check this out. Look at this worksheet. Look at this copy that I'm using for our customers. I mean, even using a Google Doc to store copy for standard emails that you use before you get to the point of, hey, I'm going to automate this. Let's go ahead and have a place where we can have some copy that we know is going to work well for these customers. And it still is automation, right? I'm not having to type up that email from scratch every time. I'm able to copy, paste, do a little tweaking, but it's making me more efficient, right? It's still a tool.
Yeah.
Alyssa, Mickey, anything to add to that for Jason's question?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I do think having Google Suite is probably, if especially if you're new to the tool or you're new to your organization, and also depending on how many customers you have, I would say something when you're looking at what tools should you have. Do you have 50 customers? Are you going somewhere with 1,000 new customers? I'm assuming if you're the first hire, maybe not as many, but I don't know that, but that's something to think about too, is who are your customer base, how many people you're trying to reach. Also the expectation from somebody you might be, from the person you are going to have to report into. Are they going to ask you in 2 months, can have a report on what you're doing and how everything is going? I think there's a certain thing to think about as a new hire, what the expectations are also of your role. But I do think I agree with Andrew on the Google Suite because of what you just mentioned in terms of you can do project managing and sheets. You can build out your customer playbooks and journeys in like any type of the Google documents, like the presentation, the slides. So there's those, I do believe that that's a good basic way of, not just basic, it does have some robust functionalities, but I do think that's one of the tools you should definitely have, is something that you can build out all these other things that you're going to need to do, but also knowing what the expectations are of your role.
Awesome. Adel, can you hit done on Jason's? All right. Next, from Michael on LinkedIn. Michael, thanks for joining us. Has anyone else found that our products, as in customer success products, are not built with CSMs in mind? AKA, when looking at a CSP, data is a massive item that takes a lot of time to figure out. Most customer success platforms have a way of transforming data to how they need it. However, there might be gaps or areas that the product usage is lacking. Would love to get everybody else's perspective on this, of course, but Michael, I'm a data guy. I spent 10 years in analytics, BI, data. This is not a problem just with customer success tools. You know, there's a long history of just garbage data in systems in general that sometimes make any tool implementation difficult.
Data and data structure, and I'm not by no means am I the leading expert here, but it requires a lot of thinking, a lot of preparedness to get it right. And when it goes wrong, it becomes really, really difficult. And I'll give, like a specific example in the customer success realm. For all of you out there, there's probably some sort of data you need to capture as a CSM, or your team needs to capture. It might be, hey, what did they say to this question? Yes or no? That itself is data. And what I've seen from a customer success operations perspective is those come up along the way. People make decisions on how we're going to ask these questions, how and where we're going to store that data, what is the structure of that data. And as a company grows, all of those data points grow exponentially. And it's very hard for humans to wrap their head around things that grow exponentially, as unfortunately we learned with COVID. It was very hard for us to wrap our heads around it. So Andrew's absolutely right. This is not a CS specific problem, but it's actually amplified because it's already kind of in a bad place because it's very difficult to do well. And customer success as a function, as an organization, as an industry is probably the least mature of all of the different organizations departments that exist within organizations. So that amplifies that problem. And the current CSPs are trying their best to take something that's not in a good place and to make it usable.
Awesome. Adel, Lisa, anything else to add?
No, not really. I mean, I think really said a lot of it there. For me, I think if there's one thing that question made me think is, who are those products built for and with who in mind, if not the individual CSMs, and maybe it's the leadership team, like that kind of lens, and speaks a little bit more to, hey, if you're using a journey builder or you're trying to identify churn risks or whatever, there might be kind of a roll up here that they're that these tools are focusing on that only help us kind of make the ROI argument to keep one of those tools if we're doing it correctly.
Salesforce was not built for salespeople. Salesforce was built for sales managers,
exactly,
for leadership to get their arms around the pipeline, to come up with a predictable revenue stream. So it's, but this goes back to my original statement around you need to understand what it is you're trying to achieve in order to make the right tool selection for, to help you achieve that. Right. So this is why in one of my mentees that I've had for many years, one of her first roles was one of her first leadership roles was as a player coach, and the CEO hired her and said, "Here, I want you to implement this particular CS tool." I'm not going to mention any specific names, and he said he mandated it. And this was before she had mapped out the customer journey and understood all the key moments of truth and all of the things that really played a part in the customers achieving their ultimate goals. And so she implemented it as she was told to do. A year later, she had to re-implement it, because after she implemented it, then she focused on the things that really needed to get done, and it changed everything that they were measuring, everything that they were doing. All of the process, all the calls to action, everything changed. So,
and that's why
awesome. Hey, Michael, thank you for the question. We got a few more minutes here. Gary asks, how do you communicate success plans in a self-service environment? Mickey, what have you got?
So self-service is really fascinating. So if you're going to do self-service as a motion, my first question is that 100% of your customer base, or is that just a segment of your customer base? So if, let's say, either one, you have to think about what are success plans in general. Success plans are usually, here's the outcomes you're trying to achieve, and here's the path you're going to chart to get to those outcomes. So how you communicate those in a self-service environment, it could be as simple as an email, either manual or automated, that says customers like you usually need to achieve this by this date. And to do that, you need to do X, Y, and Z. Click here to take the first step.
So
that would be like the really simple tactical.
Very prescriptive. Do this, then do this, then do this, kind of leading them down the path.
Yeah. And I would say prescriptive as far as you can segment them. If there's some sort of segmentation that makes it very easy. Also, you should constantly be refreshing your information. So if you're learning about what customer outcomes look like at different stages, as much as you can feed that in, the better. And I think in a self-service environment, if you have in-app, if you have other channels, all the better. That might not be possible, but remember, like, everybody's got an email and they all want to achieve something. Tell them what they need to achieve. Tell them what it's going to solve for their business. And guess what? Your marketing sales team probably actually already has a lot of that high level stuff built.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, I want to talk about this question that came in from Nikki. Can a CS tool help determine your customer segmentation, or would you recommend having this outlined before implementing? I personally think that it's the question is yes and no on both accounts. I think you need to take a stab at segmentation, but once you have a tool that's capturing information and you start to gather data about what's happening with your customers, you're going to want to reassess that and potentially make a change to your segmentation. What do you all think?
Yeah, my one sentence answer is segmentation is an iterative process.
Yeah.
So it will always need updating across different tools, different organizations, different timeframes, everything.
Well, in customer success is a constantly evolving process, right? So this isn't a Ronco oven where you set it and forget it. Okay. This is everything that you do. And that's the other thing to remember when you're talking about tools is, especially if you're going to be implementing one of the beefier customer success platforms. I think you need to be cognizant of and train your team for the eventuality that you're going to evolve what you're doing. So you're going to need to change things as you move forward, and you need to be prepared for that. It's not static. You don't just set it and forget it.
Yeah, my experience with segmentation too. So I've got two pieces I would add on. I think one, if you're at a stage where like customer segmentation is needed for a tool to be effective, and you haven't identified your customer segments, then it's probably too early for that robust of a tool. And then two, like where I start with segmentation alignment is actually probably looking earlier in the customer journey and seeing, how's your sales team segmenting like their team or sales motions or anything along those lines, and then seeing how much you can align like the customer journey to that as well. So there's probably other folks in your organization, whether it's product or sales or whoever, talking about segmentation. And I would start there as a good place to get some ideas and start to assumptions to define for your customer base.
Awesome. Nikki, thanks for the question. Henry on LinkedIn asks, is there a tool that makes success planning and everything you have said easy to build and share? I think we kind of touched on this to an extent. I haven't. Have any of you actually seen a specific success planning management tool? I've seen success plans attached in some of the customer success platforms as attachments, as PDFs, because once again, you want something that is easy to distribute, that's easy to consume, that nobody has to have a special login for it. So typically these are, and what we recommend in our training program is these are shared as like a PDF, a one-page PDF that everybody can open and review. Mm-hmm. But I don't know of anything out there that's specifically. No. Okay.
No, I mean, that's why we use right now where I work. We use a Google Sheets and create a success plan that's very easy to read and put it into PDF.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'd say the easier the better, and something that is ubiquitous is better. So if everybody knows how to open a PDF, if everybody knows how to open a spreadsheet and look at a row, that is best for that particular thing, because can't automate it, right? Like can't really automate the collection of a success plan and objectives and outcomes. So what's important is that it's accurate, that it's accessible, that it helps you keep accountability and responsibility with who and at the right time.
Yeah, but the key thing to remember with success plans is they're going to evolve as you move through the customer journey. And there is a lot of benefit of keeping those revisions. The nice thing about PDF, doesn't matter if they're Windows or they're Mac or probably even Linux. It really doesn't matter what type of systems people are using. They don't have to have a special log on to a particular system. It's an attachment. People can, or they can download it off of out of a shared volume, what have you. So awesome. Thanks, Henry, for your question. And we are at the end of our time. Actually, Greg asked, do you have a list or spreadsheet of common CS software functionality that you could share with us that we could use to start prioritizing needs before we start approaching CS software companies to get demos? Any of you have anything like that?
I would say, getting back to your point, Andrew, is when we were looking at and doing all those demos, we created a list of functionalities and what we would want based on our own needs. Really, what it came down to is looking at those based on the CEO would want reports on a, say, monthly basis. How many people were on our team? What would we be using it for? For instance, we were using it for onboarding as well. So I think when you're thinking about the functionalities, that you need, it's really based on how you're going to be using it. If you're not using it for onboarding, you're saying using Jira instead, you have a whole integration team, you might not need that in your CS tool. So I think that's something I would say, but I will look to see if I still have the list of questions that spreadsheet I put together, which is probably similar to what Andrew, you teach.
Yeah.
And
just
see if I
send it to me, and if it makes sense, we'll post it with the recording of this.
I can share too, Andrew. We have some really, really lightweight RFP templates that we use to kind of kick some of these off. So I'd be happy to share.
Yeah, if you can share those with me, and Mickey, if you got anything, that'd be great. And what I'll do is I'll take that, I'll amalgamate it all, and we'll throw it out there as a Google Sheet that people can get access to. All right, we're at the end of our time that we've got today. I think it was a great conversation, but it's not what I think, it's what all of you think. So please let us know by posting your feedback on LinkedIn and tagging either myself, our guests, or Success Coaching. I want to thank our guests for spending the time with us and for the ideas, thoughts, insights, and best practices that you shared. One final note, great CS leaders know they don't have all the answers, but they know where to get them. That's why we created this CS Leadership Roundtable, to harness the knowledge and experience of the community to help improve everyone. We hope to see you again at our next event on September 14th, when we'll discuss career paths in customer success. Until then, make sure to make safe for yourself and your mindset every single day, and have a great rest of your day, week, and month, everybody. And if you're going to be at Pulse, look for me. I will be there tomorrow wearing the iconic t-shirt. If you find me, snap a photo, post it on LinkedIn, you get one of our nifty notebooks. So come and find, it's a little Where's Waldo, a little Where's Andrew game tomorrow at Pulse. So hopefully if you're there, come up, introduce yourself. Would love to meet you. Thanks, y'all.